Yes! Yes!
A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks. Ooh, ooh, and clicks. For kids who love to save the day, choose a Lego set. A gift that always clicks.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Hey everyone, it's Sadia Khan and welcome back to Immigrantly. Before we get into today's episode, a quick heads up. This isn't a regular episode of Immigrantly, it's a feed drop. And it's one I am genuinely excited to share with all of you. A couple of years ago, I interviewed Mila Atmos on Immigrantly. Now, she's the host of Future Hindsight, and she's one of those people who thinks about democracy and civic power not as abstractions, but as things regular people actually build or lose. That conversation really stayed with me. Now, Mila and the Future Hindsight team have made a new series called Occupy, an Unfinished Uprising. It tells the story of Occupy Wall Street, the first American movement driven by social media through the people who lived it. What Occupy got right, what it got wrong, and what its lessons mean for this moment when so many of us feel like nobody is coming to save us. If you care about grassroots power, protest, and how movements are actually built, and if you listen to this show, I know you are going to want to hear this one. So here it is, episode 1 of Occupy, an Unfinished Uprising from Future Hindsight. If it grabs you, follow the show wherever you're listening right now. Don't forget to come back for a new Immigrantly episode next week.
Future Hindsight. Zuccotti Park is a tiny plaza in Manhattan's financial district. A small rectangle of concrete and granite surrounded on every side by skyscrapers. It's mostly a spot for office workers to smoke a cigarette or eat a quick falafel while they scroll on their phones. After dark, when the offices have emptied out and the surrounding shops and restaurants are closed, the park gets quiet, even a little eerie, usually. But on the night of November 15th, 2011, Zuccotti Park was buzzing with tension and fear. Dozens of tents were set up among the grid of carefully landscaped trees, sheltering about 200 activists. They had come to occupy the park as both a political statement and a social experiment, determined to stay as long as they could. It had been 59 days. But now, as the 60th day of the occupation was approaching, hundreds of police officers began swarming the park.
All right, is everyone there? Just so you know, right now we're being raided at Occupy Wall Street. Please start tweeting as many people as possible and letting folks know. Occupy Wall Street is being raided.
As the cops surrounded them, the occupiers had a live stream going. They sent out a call for help to their network of supporters across the city.
It was the middle of the night, and suddenly phone calls, text messages, like all these notifications. My phone just blew the hell up. And it's like, the park is being raided now. We need people now.
Hundreds of supporters began rushing to Zuccotti Park as the occupiers tried to hold ground.
The cops are like right in front of us. A wall of cops in riot gear. They've got the shields and they're fully weaponized. And we look like a bunch of hippies.
There's people screaming everywhere. Like literally tents are being torn apart with knives. They're throwing people's
stuff over their heads as they're going through tents, just throwing them out.
All my shit's in there. All my friends are in there. That's my fucking home.
Supporters began arriving, ready to join what had essentially become a giant sit-in. But the cops had blocked off streets and installed barricades around the park.
The cab came in closer and closer to Zuccotti. There was police everywhere. Roads were blocked. It felt like a war zone. The cab driver was scared, so we're like, don't go any further. We'll get out and walk.
I was like, let me out. And I ran the rest of the way. I was trying to get over these things. I was like, how do I climb over this? I was trying to do parkour.
Soon, an enormous crowd of people protesting the raid surrounded the park. They locked arms, blocking police vans and watching as the police arrested the occupiers. Tension and rage ticked up.
Get back! Get him back on the floor! Get him on the floor!
Zuccotti Park was the nucleus of the Occupy movement, the first American movement driven by social media. The occupiers had slept in the park for almost 2 months through the rain and snow. They had been infiltrated, pepper sprayed, and made fun of by the mainstream media. But their message, that the capitalist system was rigged to benefit the 1% and exploit the rest of us, that message had resonated from the moment they set up camp in the park.
What started as less than a dozen college students camping out in a park near the New York Stock Exchange is now hundreds of protesters.
The crowds swelled dramatically as labor unions and college students added their voices.
Protests against Wall Street continued to grow across the country.
Occupy Wall Street has become Occupy the World.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Occupy Wall Street came on the heels of a devastating economic crash that was caused by corporate greed, but paid for by millions of regular people who lost their homes, jobs, and retirement savings. Our political leaders bailed out the banks by using taxpayer dollars. Basically, regular working people had to foot the bill for corporate greed, and Occupy was able to channel the widespread rage, frustration, and despair into something inspiring. It's hard to explain why it exploded so dramatically and then flamed out so quickly. But looking back, it's clear that Occupy changed the way Americans understood capitalism. It punctured the myth that hard work is all it takes to get ahead. Politicians like Bernie Sanders, who embraced the idea of the 99%, suddenly became icons. Occupy Wall Street truly kicked off an era of protests and populist politics that have, in many ways, led us to the strange moment we're in today. And today, well, we're in a very dark place. Donald Trump is marching us steadily toward full authoritarianism, and our political leaders on both the left and right seem incapable of or unwilling to stop it. But that Occupy energy, that recognition that no one is coming to save us, so we better save ourselves, that energy is bubbling up again, just like it did in 2011. We again have an economic crisis, a war in the Middle East, and no one seems to be looking out for regular working people. Understanding the story of Occupy can help us figure out how to harness that grassroots power more effectively than we have before. And I want to know, what did Occupy get right? And what did it get wrong? What can we learn from its successes and failures that might help us build a new movement against fascism? From Future Hindsight, I'm your host, Mila Atmos, and this is Occupy, an unfinished uprising. Episode 1, The Invitation. The Occupy movement starts with the story of a generation whose promise had been abruptly halted when the economy crashed in 2008.
The housing market collapse created one financial crisis after another, and it often seemed as if the news could only get worse.
In just 6 months, 3 of the 5 biggest independent firms on Wall Street have now disappeared.
Bailing out Wall Street is the only way to save Main Street, so says the president.
The signs were everywhere, but now it's official, we are in a recession.
The bankers who caused the crash got bailed out. Congress allocated $700 billion taxpayer dollars to stabilize the economy, and most of that money went to the too-big-to-fail financial institutions that had caused the economic meltdown. Distressed homeowners got little assistance. And the people who'd been laid off or lost huge chunks of retirement savings because of the crash, they didn't get any bailouts. Meanwhile,
The 9 banks that received the most help from the massive taxpayer bailout gave 5,000 employees bonuses of at least $1 million each.
in the aftermath of the crash, a lot of young people either could not afford college or were graduating with crushing student loan debt. They were entering the workforce in the middle of a deep recession, and their ability to launch a career or repay their loans or buy their first home, well, all of that had essentially been put on pause for who knows how long. To put it another way, what COVID lockdowns were to Gen Z, the 2008 financial crash was to millennials. I want to introduce you to 3 people who were in their teens or early 20s when the economy took its nosedive. First is Nalini Stamp, a born and raised New Yorker, an Afro-Latina woman.
My mother went bankrupt during the financial crisis. We were served an eviction notice from our apartment. Like, all of these things came crashing down, and I never was comfortable about saying it.
A confluence of medical bills, delinquent child support, and the economic crash put them in a tight spot. Nalini was in high school at the time.
I was like, why is there only this amount of food in the fridge? I didn't feel like we were on steady ground. We got an eviction notice. It was a pink slip. That's when I started to not show up to school anymore. I said, what is the point of this?
Nalini realized college was out of reach. The price tag was just too high. So she gave up, quit school, got a GED, started working minimum wage jobs. By 2011, Nalini had gotten a lower-level job at the Working Families Party, a pro-worker political party that runs progressive candidates.
I have a good enough degree, GED, and I was lying to my colleagues when I first started at the Working Families Party that I went to college for some bit of time. I was so embarrassed by that.
Then there's Sandy Nurse. She was born in Panama to 2 Navy sailors, a white American mother and a black Panamanian father.
I started as a kid who was a part of a U.S. military occupying force, the mission of which is to exploit people, land, and resources for the benefit of the United States of America. And I spent a lot of time, almost my entire childhood, moving around the world and seeing the reactions to that, the consequences of that.
She went to college in the U.S., where she graduated with a poli-sci degree and an incredible amount of student loan debt. And in 2011, she'd begun what seemed like a promising career in humanitarian aid.
I was just coming off of a United Nations World Food Program in Haiti. I was visiting different cities and villages to write these reports about the distribution of food aid. At the time of the earthquake, all food systems collapsed in Haiti.
So she's a do-gooder, trying to help Haitians in the aftermath of an earthquake that killed hundreds of thousands of people and left many more homeless. Except the way that the UN food program was helping just feels wrong. The UN was paying Haitians who had just been through a traumatic natural disaster in food or low wages in exchange for hard labor.
The thing that really just kind of snapped for me and essentially just broke my heart was seeing on this mountainside these old Haitian women in their flip-flops carrying these boulders to make these walls to prevent the landslides. And this is a job that most in the United States we'd see on a highway. You'd see people with like a backhoe or like a big claw caterpillar thing. These women are just moving these boulders. And I just said, this is not for me. Like, we should not be asking these women to work for a sack of beans or some small dollars to do public works projects that are the job of a state, a nation state, or a government. I walked away from that really let down by the promise of what I was being told as a child about the project of Americanism.
And so Sandy quit that whole endeavor, gave up on that career path to take a less ethically fraught job.
My family was upset and didn't understand what I was doing. And they were like, you're like a food delivery person now.
So, summer of 2011, she was delivering food to residents of gentrified Brooklyn and trying to figure out her place in the world.
And it just so happened at that moment, Occupy came about.
Which brings me to Marisa Holmes, one of the people who planned the occupation from the beginning. She's a soft-spoken white woman. She comes off as earnest and idealistic, not a cynic like Sandy or Nalini. Maybe it's her Midwestern roots.
I grew up in central Ohio in a small town that kind of became a suburb. And my parents had been involved in Democratic Party politics mostly. I mean, they definitely talked about politics constantly.
Her dad was actually a labor lawyer for a time.
I was in high school when 9/11 happened.
Terrorists declare war on the United States, hijacking jetliners, crashing them into New York's World Trade Towers.
President George W. Bush made the call to enter into a war that would end up expanding and lasting 20 years.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun selected targets of military...
I learned about, politics and how power works and how to organize first, from my parents, and then became more radicalized in the context of the anti-war movement.
From then on, she was a dedicated activist. By the summer of 2011, Marisa was 25, a grad student living in Brooklyn, and part of a new anarchist group called the New York City General Assembly. And it was that group, the anarchists, who really gave life to the Occupy movement.
It was a long, hot August in the summer of 2011, and we met under the Hare Krishna tree in Tompkins Square Park.
Tompkins Square Park is a leafy oasis in the East Village neighborhood of Manhattan. It has all the regular things a New York City park has. A bustling playground, a dog run, old men sitting on benches feeding the pigeons, rats, and the Hare Krishna tree. But what, you may be wondering, is the Hare Krishna tree?
In the middle of Tompkins Square Park, there's a rather large tree with roots that kind of extend out into the concrete and break it up. And people go there to meditate and play music and just be together.
This huge elm tree was the site of the first Hare Krishna outdoor chanting session in the country in 1966, which is how it got its name. In August of 2011, it became the meeting spot for the New York City General Assembly.
I always got there early and would jot down a few things for agenda points and wait for people to show up. Usually people were late because, operating on anarchist time, people are generally late.
Many of the people who showed up at the Hare Krishna tree had been protesting the city's austerity measures because, remember, while the financial institutions that had caused the 2008 crash had gotten massive government bailouts, city budgets all over the place had been cut. And 3 years later, we're still struggling. They had camped outside City Hall for 3 weeks to protest then-Mayor Michael Bloomberg's budget cuts to city services. They called that occupation Bloombergville, but it had petered out rather unsuccessfully. Now they were hungry to do something else, and they were trying to figure out what exactly the next big thing would be. Their meetings, which they called assemblies, would stretch on for hours as they debated strategy and principles. The afternoons in the park would turn into evenings at nearby bars, where smaller groups would continue their discussions around pitchers of beer. There was no shortage of ideas and opinions among this committed group of activists. The challenge was getting a bigger crowd to show up to whatever direct action they planned.
There was not a lot of social movement energy.
This is Astra Taylor, an author and documentary filmmaker who was in her mid-30s at the time. She had already spent more than a decade as an activist and, I think it's safe to say, was worn down a bit. That was from experience.
It was an incredibly demoralizing experience to protest in the aughts. I mean, typically what would happen is the cops would kettle you, which means that they would sort of wrap your protest in this orange netting and haul you off to jail. Or they'd say, stay in this little tiny free speech pen. If there was political energy, it was online. There was this kind of prankster, disruptive spirit on the internet.
And that is where the spark that ignited Occupy came from. A meme. In July 2011, 90,000 people got an email with a stark and beautiful image. In black and white, you see the Charging Bull statue, that huge bronze beast in Manhattan's financial district that's supposed to represent the stock market. A ballerina is standing on top of the bull's back. She's thin, white, wearing a dark unitard. Her eyes are lowered. She's in a classic arabesque pose, arms outstretched and one leg gracefully arcing out behind her. Behind the ballerina and the bull, there's a crowd emerging from a haze of smoke. They look like our stereotypical idea of anarchists, wearing gas masks and dark clothes. They're surging forward in the same charging motion as the bull. One of them brandishes a stick. At the top of the image, in red, all caps, it says, "What is our one demand?" Below it, hashtag Occupy Wall Street, September 17th, bring tent. The email with this image came from Adbusters, an activist magazine that liked to stir up trouble. It was known for its beautifully designed spoof ads critiquing consumer culture. Adbusters regularly instigated boycotts and encouraged people to artfully vandalize billboards. And now, their Occupy Wall Street image and hashtag was ripping through the internet. One of the groups that promoted this idea to Occupy Wall Street was Anonymous, the hacktivist collective that had gained notoriety for launching cyber attacks against corporations and the Church of Scientology. Anonymous announced that they were taking to the streets and urged people to join them.
Fellow citizens of the internet, we're Anonymous. On September 17th, Anonymous will flood into Lower Manhattan, set up tents, kitchens, peaceful barricades and occupy Wall Street for a few months. Once there, we shall incessantly repeat one simple demand in a plurality of voices. We want freedom. This is a non-violent protest. We do not encourage violence in any way. The abuse and corruption of corporations, banks and governments ends here. Join us. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Wall Street, expect us.
The editors at Adbusters had made it clear that they only wanted to instigate, not organize. And certainly, Anonymous wasn't used to IRL actions. For Marisa's group of anarchists, the New York City General Assembly, it was like they'd been given a save the date for a party they'd been thinking about throwing, but hadn't fully committed to yet. But now that someone else had announced an actual time and place, they decided to go with it. They created a plan for the first day and hoped that people would show up. And really, that was the big question. Would online enthusiasm translate into the real world? Would people actually show up? Astra was skeptical.
It was a pretty bleak time to be a leftist. Despite the fact that we were in an economic meltdown, there was mass foreclosures, there was mass joblessness, economic insecurity. The left wasn't mobilizing, but the right was.
USA! USA!
From Washington, D.C. to Connecticut to Wisconsin and all over the country, thousands of people came out to protest government spending.
The Tea Party got off the ground in 2009.
The Tea Party movement was a right-wing populist uprising. They protested both the bank bailouts and government efforts to help distressed homeowners and unemployed people, which they viewed as government handouts to undeserving poor people. And so, they showed up en masse on tax day to protest government spending.
Over 500,000 people across the country attended these tax day protests. People were angry about the bank bailouts, they were angry about the economy, they were feeling insecure, and it was channeled into this right-wing reactionary racist movement. It was like, how can we be in a situation akin to the Great Depression and the populist right is mobilizing and progressives and the left are nowhere to be found?
But now there was a call to respond from the left that seemed to have some traction. It was late, 3 years after the economic crash. But at least it was something. And it promised to be noisy and disruptive and maybe a little nuts. A call to camp out on Wall Street for as long as they could, as a way to bring attention to how unfair it was that regular people had borne the brunt of a financial crash brought on by Wall Street greed. It was something that, well, Astra didn't help plan and didn't think was going to work. But
the fact that there was crickets on our side after this incredible betrayal of the country by these bankers and by the politicians of both parties who were bailing them out and leaving people to suffer, it just felt like, well, we have to do something. And that was enough of a motivation to get me to show up at something that I wasn't particularly optimistic about.
Perhaps it was only because Occupy was kind of the only game in town, but our cynics, Sandy and Nalini, that I introduced to you earlier, were curious.
I had been following online a little bit, and one of my best friends, both of us were kind of these gloom and doom, disillusioned, apathetic, hate political culture. We had that kind of a summer. We were just kind of reveling in the futileness of everything. And so we were kind of following along, and we just decided, we're going to go down there on the first day. Let's just check it out.
I was approached by a lot of white people about Occupy Wall Street, like in the months before. And I was like, why would I choose to sleep outside? What? like, what is this white shit, to be honest? That was my, I was like, what is this? And sleeping outside, by choice, I thought it was insane.
The day to Occupy arrived. September 17th, 2011. A Saturday. Marisa and a bunch of the other hardcore activists were ready to set up camp outside the New York Stock Exchange.
I woke up around 8 o'clock and packed my backpack, which was quite large. I'm 5'2", and it was probably my size. I made my way on 4 train, and then I got off at the Wall Street stop and wandered around and realized that the police were already there and there were barricades up.
Since they couldn't actually get to the stock exchange, Marisa and her fellow activists from the New York General Assembly rerouted the group to Zuccotti Park. The crowd, some with signs, some playing instruments, made their way there. Nalini showed up at Zuccotti and looked around. The occupiers had been doing yoga, face painting, eating peanut butter sandwiches, singing. There was already a drum circle. It didn't feel very serious.
I felt like I was in the movie Hair. It was very hippy-dippy. I was political to the point of doing stuff, but I never was I'm an anarchist or a socialist. I just cared that the rich have too much money. I knew it in my bones that rich people, corporations, they're crazy. And it was an injustice. But I just looked around and was yeah, I'm going to be here for an hour.
Eventually, the festival part of it all that Nalini really wasn't feeling transitioned into something deeper and more personal.
For the afternoon, people were having small group conversations on questions that we had come up with in the New York City General Assembly. And those questions were loosely what world do you want to live in? What's happening right now with the economic crisis? How do we get from where we are now to this world that we want to live in?
Astra arrived in time for the small group conversations.
What was so striking to me and caught my imagination out of the gate was that instead of standing there and chanting, which would have been a kind of conventional thing to do, that's what protesters usually do, we were all told to sit in small circles with our neighbors. And so we immediately organized ourselves into these mini assemblies, groups of maybe 12 to 15 people, and we just started talking. And that already felt was such a break with the usual script. Because instead of standing sort of outside the New York Stock Exchange and saying, you suck, and shouting at it, we were actually building bonds with each other.
People had all kinds of stories. They had hitchhiked across the country and had nothing. Had no job, no money, just, used whatever they could to get to the occupation. And there was this like palpable sense of rage, like this simmering rage that people wanted to unleash. People had been waiting for years to say something, and they finally could say it.
Nalini had certainly felt that way. She'd been carrying the shame of the empty fridge, the eviction notice, her lack of college education, the lie to her employer that she hadn't been able to afford the college education she had put on her resume. She was suddenly hearing stories just like hers from other people.
What shifted for me was that General Assembly that first night and people getting up and telling their stories.
At first, people told their stories in these small groups. And then, the whole crowd, estimated to be almost 1,000 people, was brought together for a General Assembly. In anarchist fashion, there was no leader, just a facilitation team that invited everyone to take turns speaking.
I remember somebody saying that their parents' home got foreclosed upon. I remember hearing somebody just said, I went to all this college and have all this debt. And like, we were all told we had to go to college to get a better job. And somebody was like, and I'm working at Starbucks. Not that it's like, you know, solidarity with the Starbucks Workers Union, but like that wasn't what we were told you go to college for, right?
There was a building sense of connection of no, it wasn't just you or your bad choices that put you in debt. There's a pattern here. With each sort of confession, there was this
sense of hope. We know how bad it is, and we just need to come together and build this space, and like it's gonna happen. And we are the people to do it. The sense of urgency and commitment was really, I had never seen that before.
Part of it was the way all of this was unfolding. They used something called the people's mic, where everyone had to repeat what the speaker was saying. And again, anyone could speak. There weren't leaders or vetted speakers. And then there were the twinkle fingers, where you waggle your fingers to show agreement. It was just so different from anything Nalini had seen before.
This whole like hands thing, twinkle fingers, I was like, okay, this is gonna be wild.
But she was, in spite of herself, inspired. She stood up to speak at one point.
I remember getting up. I don't remember what I said. I think I was like, I hate the blah, blah, blah. But I don't remember what I said. But that moment I sat down after I spoke and I was like, whatever's happening, I like it. And I'm going to do what needs to be done.
That moment of cynicism turning to optimism was happening for other people at the park too, including Sandy, who had arrived with friends.
I can't explain exactly why I stayed. I just know that we went down, we went for this little march, and then we hung out in the park and participated in these breakout group conversations.
Of course, the powers that be wanted them out of the park. In the spirit of direct democracy, the decision to stay or go was up to the group as a whole. So, Marisa took a bullhorn to make an announcement.
A really amazing process of direct democracy. But we recognize that this is a specific group, a gathering that we have here, and we want to hear from people here to see how we can proceed tonight. So one of our first sort of orders of business is, are we going to stay or not?
She passed the bullhorn to someone else from the facilitation team.
I'm here with some logistical information. This square is technically a privately owned square. We have been in contact with the property owner, who has told us that his intention is to not allow people to sleep in this park tonight.
The pros and cons were weighed. The sun fully set. People were lit by flashlights. And at some point, the bullhorn was replaced by the people's mic. Perhaps to dissuade the cops from issuing noise violations.
Facilitation team. That people want. Stay here. And occupy this square. How do you feel about that?
This was a moment for each individual, Sandy, Astra, Nalini, and everyone else to decide, would they stay or would they go? Sandy.
The crowd kept getting thinner and thinner, and we just kept hanging out. And eventually we just decided, we're going to stay the night. I mean, fuck it. See what happens. we don't have much on the line because we're not fully invested in the idea that we're going to get the world we want. So let's just hang out here with these folks who seem angry too.
Meanwhile, somewhere else in the park, Nalini was making the same decision.
Me and my friends, we were like, you're going to sleep here? And we're like, yeah.
Astra made a different choice.
I headed home because I did not think this tiny ragtag group had a snowball's chance in hell of staying the night. No way. I could see the cops. They were coming closer. And my sense was that they were going to go, okay, kids, you've had enough. Like, you know, we're going to beat the shit out of you. That's what I thought was about to happen. And I didn't want to be there for that.
Marisa was anxiously watching the police in riot gear.
I was terrified because I didn't feel like we had prepared enough. I felt this sense of responsibility. So I was both excited and terrified of what would come next.
Nathan Schneider, a journalist who had been covering activism in the city, was there.
There had been a few thousand people there that day, but by this point, it was dark. New York has this kind of eerie feeling in these sections of the city where not a lot of people are out at night in these corridors of office buildings. And so by this point, there were just 100, maybe 200 at most, if that, protesters sitting in this park, surrounded by police. It was a very scary moment.
In the dark, in that moment of tension, he witnessed some kind of exchange between what seemed like the property owners and the NYPD.
I saw a Suburban roll up, a police vehicle. You know, someone was talking to the officers who were there. I think I saw Police Commissioner Kelly. Something that was said in that exchange, in that moment, said, okay, this is not going to be an attack. The police surrounding this park had made the decision to let it be. And after that, the tension kind of reduced.
People started to fall asleep. Here's Nalini again.
I just got too tired and we all fell asleep on the ground. It got cold. I didn't bring anything.
And Sandy.
One of my friends drove to Yonkers to get us blankets. I don't know why he went that far, but he's like, I'm gonna make sure you all have blankets, and went up to Yonkers and came back with all these blankets.
And then in the middle of the night, a fairy comes, I swear to God, just drops blankets over us. And that was the moment when I was like, okay, yeah, we might not know what we're doing, but we'll figure shit out for each other.
Occupy is a story of the improbable becoming possible. A story of hopelessness and cynicism making way for inspiration and collective action. It was clear from that very first day that Occupy had tapped into something that Nalini, Sandy, Marisa, and thousands of others had all been feeling. They were, understandably, furious with the Wall Street bankers who crashed the economy. And they felt betrayed by the political leaders who enabled, and some would say, rewarded it. But Occupy was a lot more than an opportunity to rage at the system. Anger wasn't the thing that kept people coming back for 59 days to sleep on the concrete. There was some other magic happening that had something to do with the energizing force of collective action. It's that, the energy, the inspiration, that's most interesting to me. Is there a way to harness that again? Occupy was also a social experiment. They weren't just there to protest. They were trying to create an anarchist, anti-capitalist utopia inside that tiny park. And against all odds, people across the United States set up their own occupations and copied what the radicals in New York City were doing. In this way, Zuccotti Park became a testing ground for a set of ideals that the organizers had arrived with. Leaderlessness, radical inclusivity, direct democracy. At the beginning, it wasn't at all clear if any of it would work. What happens when a movement has no leader? Does radical inclusivity make it stronger or more chaotic? And if change must come from outside the system, how do you build something powerful enough, not just to resist injustice, but to replace it? Coming up on the next 5 episodes of Occupy, an unfinished uprising.
Occupy Wall Street, it was a really exciting and enlivening and beautiful train wreck, but it was a train wreck.
The NYPD would pick people up on the street
for public drunkenness or disorderly conduct or something, they would drop them off in the park and say, you need a hot meal, you need a blanket, you need a coat, go down to Zuccotti Park.
And the escalation of police activity was like really, really wild.
Out of nowhere, that's when we were sprayed.
Occupy, it was a physical space where people put their values into practice. And that's not something that we see very often.
I wish something like it would happen again.
Occupy, an unfinished uprising, is a Future Hindsight production. Hosted and executive produced by me, Mila Atmos. Reporting, writing, and producing by Maria Luisa Tucker. Additional production help from Mia Warren, Erika Gjada, Megan Detrie, and Lizzie Jacobs. Audio engineering and producing by Zack Travis. Archival research by Marisa Holmes. Archival material courtesy of Occupy Wall Street Media Working Group. Original music by Rude Mechanical Orchestra and Pooj Roo. Special thanks to TJ Raphael, Lauren Passell, Arielle Nissenblatt, and Kate Blumenfeld for being our first listeners and sounding boards, and to Tom Koenig for his support.